Mike Mayock on how/if Derek Carr injury impacts the Saints NFL draft plans. Ladies and gentlemen, the Rich Eisen Show, back-to-back Rich Eisen Show videos, just how it played out, ladies and gentlemen, just how it played out. So Mike Mayock, you may know him as an executive in the NFL, especially with the Raiders, but before we even get into any of that, he was not the GM of the Raiders when Derek Carr was drafted, so there's no draft correlation there at all. We are 7 days away from the NFL draft, and I will be live streaming the entire first round. I did it last year. It was a ton of fun. We're going to do it this year. This year, last year was kind of like, all right, we know what we're doing here. We're either taking one of like three players. Now, this is probably the most important draft in recent memory for the New Orleans Saints. So if you are watching, tune into the stream. It'll be on Twitch, YouTube, and Twitter. So all three spots you can watch it. It'll be a blast. Okay, let's go ahead and get into the video, see what Mike has to say about this. Now, this was sent to me. This was email, or I think it was on Twitter. And they said there were some golden tidbits in here. So I'm looking forward to the golden tidbits.
First order of business is the last time we spoke together, you were going through the top 10 picks of this year's draft. And we don't call it a mock draft with you, Mike. Here's what we're calling. Hold on a minute. Put it up on the screen. We're calling it the Mike Mayock draft.
Oh, that's a good one, Rich.
That's what it is. It's the
Jihad Campbell at 9. So this was from 2 days ago, I believe, from this video. The Jihad Campbell is very interesting here. So if you've been watching this channel for a long time, you know that I was very high on Jihad Campbell, and he was my preferred pick here at 9. Now, Jihad is dealing with some medical issues. He had shoulder surgery. Sounds like someone else for the Saints, allegedly. But you got to factor that in. I don't think I would factor it in that much. But what it would do, now it's not the case here, but if it was between Jalen Walker and Jihad Campbell, I may take Jalen Walker depending how you feel about the medical. If all goes smooth, he'll be fine. He will still miss time. So it depends on, that rhymed. So it depends on how you look at that. I don't think it's that big of a deal if you're drafting someone you expect to be an 8-year NFL starter. It's like, well, what is 6 months? But I understand where you don't want to draft guys who just had surgery. So I understand that. But to see him at 9 here is very interesting, because I've seen him fall all the way to like 18, 19 because of the injury. So he's got Cam Ward, Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter, Will Campbell, Mason Graham, Ashton Genty, Armand Membu, Jalen Walker, Jihad Campbell. This is pretty sporty, I think. I think Cam Ward, Travis Hunter, obviously, I would say is guaranteed at this point. Mason Graham, I think, is pretty locked in at 5. Jacksonville could go a bunch of different directions, but Mason Graham makes sense. Ashton Genty makes perfect sense to the Raiders. Membu makes perfect sense to the Jets. Jalen Walker makes perfect sense to the Panthers. Will Campbell is maybe not, just depending on how you feel about Campbell. Depends on how you feel about drafting a guard at 4. You'll probably notice, obviously, the Saints aren't drafting a quarterback in this mock, and also Tet McMillan is falling out of the top 9, and Tyler Warren falling out of the top 9. So the question you have to ask yourself if you see this mock draft is, would you be okay with the Saints passing on Tyler Warren and/or Tet McMillan to draft Jihad Campbell in this situation?
The Mike Mayock draft, and you had Jihad Campbell going to the Saints at 9. The Derek Carr news that it appears he might not be able to play in 2025. Does that affect anything you think in the Saints draft room strategy-wise here, Mike?
I think the only people that really know that are in that building. And when they acquired Derek, keep in mind that he had an AC joint problem in his shoulder in 23. The Saints are very aware about it, were very aware about it. I don't think it's a surprise. I think what intrigues me about it is that it just came out so publicly right now before the draft. So I don't know if, I don't know, A, the severity of it. I don't know, B, how content or not content Derek is in New Orleans.
Well, we seem to know those answers. Now, this is a very weird situation. especially for a national media to cover, because they can't come out and say, well, we think he's lying, or we think this, or we think that, or whatever. But, for all intents and purposes, I think Derek Carr's time in New Orleans is done. And it is kind of surprising to me to see the rhetoric and the conversation being had around this. Like the idea that, let me try and break down all the talking points here. If the Saints knew Derek was injured, okay. If you know your guy is injured, if you know he's hurt, we got to pay him anyways, we got to restructure this bonus, okay, we'll see how bad it is. That's a whole, that's one thing. But for him to be like, I'm injured, oh, and by the way, I'm not playing. That's a whole nother side of it. And people keep saying, why should Derek have to play? Why should he have to play? And the answer is simple. Because he is under contract with the New Orleans Saints. He signed a 4-year contract. This wasn't an extension. This wasn't a contract that was forced on him. He signed it. 4 years. New Orleans Saints quarterback for 4 years. I don't care what happened with Dennis Allen. I don't care what happened with the fans. I don't care what happened with if he's nursing an injury or whatever. He has 2 years remaining on that deal. So there's no way you can slice it that if Derek Carr draws a line in the sand and says, I'm never playing for the New Orleans Saints again, I'll sit out, I'll stay home, I'll review Rolls Royces, I'll go play for another team. No matter how you cut it, he is going back on his word. He is going back on what was in that contract. That's what's happening. Okay? Now you can say whatever, stick it to the Saints, screw them. You can say, I'm ride or die with Derek Carr, I don't care. You can say all this stuff, but you cannot deny the fact that he is, at best, going back on his word and unfulfilling the promise that he made when he signed that contract. If you look at it with just like an apartment, look at it with an apartment. Let's say you sign a 2-year lease in an apartment complex. And let's say after the first year, something happens, they change office managers or whatever, and you're upset about something, and you say, you know what, I'm leaving. I'm packing my stuff and I'm leaving. No matter who's right or who's wrong or what's going on or how you feel about this person or that person, you are going back on that contract. You are going back on the handshake agreement that you had, handshake and pen, at the beginning of that contract. And that's what's happening here. So it's just a super weird scenario.
I do know that New Orleans restructured his entire contract to more cap room, which means they've effectively married him because they already paid out the entire contract for this year, all except for the veteran minimum of $1.2 million. So I think there's a lot more behind the scenes than we're aware of right now.
Yeah, obviously,
and,
Mike.
I'm not sure it affects their pick at number 9. I don't think Mickey Loomis is a panic guy. And right now I've got, in my mind, it's the top defensive player. They might go with a corner there. They could go with a defensive tackle, but I've got him going with the best player left on my board at that point on the defensive side, which is Jihad Campbell.
So
I think if we go back to the draft side of things, I think this makes the Saints much more conservative at 9. Whereas if you have Carr there, and if you have your bridge quarterback there, and you have a security blanket there, I think you do get risky. And you do say, yeah, well, let's take Shedeur Sanders, or let's take Jackson Dart, or let's take Ted McMillan, or let's take somebody here because we know we have above average quarterback play to average quarterback play from a veteran who we can trust. When you don't have that, all of a sudden it's like, well, why would we take Shedeur? Because now we don't even know if he's sitting, if he's playing. We don't know if he's better than Spencer Rattler. What's his grade compared to Rattler's grade? How do we view Rattler, who Kellen Moore and company only have known for a couple of weeks? Now you got to do all that stuff. And with that comes volatility. With volatility comes a unsure selection at a spot at 9 in which you need to be sure. The top 10 ain't time to be messing around and having all this volatility with the pick. So because of the heightened volatility of the quarterback class, where I was just listening to radio on the way to the studio, and they were saying that no one knows how the quarterback class is going to fall, as far as will it be Sanders, the second quarterback off the board, or Dart. They don't know if Milroe will be a first rounder or a third rounder. They don't know if who's going to be the third quarterback or the fourth quarterback off the board. Is it going to be Will Howard? Is it going to be Jalen Milroe? Is it going to be Kyle McCord? Is it going to be Tyler Shuck? No one knows. So the quarterback class itself is highly volatile, on top of what the Saints are dealing with in their own house. So because of that, don't look at me like that, Mike. Because of that, I think you say, you know what? There's too much happening right here. Let's go somewhere where we can just nail this pick and we can just get a good player. At the end of the day, if we just get a good player, we'll be okay. And the get a good player is Jalen Walker, Jihad Campbell, Jahdae Barron, Will Johnson, someone like just whoever. Mason Graham, whoever, if he's there, fine. I mean, something interesting. This is a wild conspiracy I had earlier. So someone asked me, what if the Saints traded up to 3 to take Shedeur Sanders? Well, simultaneously today, we heard that the Browns are pretty much locked into taking Travis Hunter, which means Abdul Carter would be there at 3. How interesting would it be if the Saints traded up to 3 to get Abdul Carter? I'm not saying they will. I'm not saying they should. I'm not saying that stuff. But if they're going to move up to 3 to take Shedeur, and Abdul Carter is sitting there at a position that a lot of people think is a huge need for the Saints, if the Saints all of a sudden have an opportunity to say, hey, we're sitting here at 3 and Abdul Carter's available, my God, I hope they would take him. I mean, I don't think they're going to trade up to 3. I don't think that's in the works. But people seem to be forgetting who else is in the draft. It's like trade up to get Shedeur. It's like, well, at 3, who the hell knows who's going to be there? At 3, all of a sudden, Travis Hunter's available, Abdul Carter's available. Who knows how the board's going to shake out? So something else to think about.
You think that with the knowledge already about Carr's shoulder baked in, it's more of a, and again, I'm reading into what you're saying. You can obviously tell me. It's more of a Spencer Rattler versus Shedeur Sanders question than Derek Carr question, you think, Mike?
I think at this point, there are a couple things, Rich. One is, what is the veteran quarterback market? And it's decimated. Cleveland signed Flacco this past week. You're looking at what? Carson Wentz or Ryan Tannehill at this point. The Kirk Cousins thing as a division rival, doubtful, highly.
The problem also you have to factor in is that the Saints are absolutely eating a ton of money. So when you're talking about getting, there's a big difference in getting Carson Wentz for $3 million versus getting Kirk Cousins for $15, $17 million, or Aaron Rodgers even for $12 million. Those are big differences when you are eating this enormous cap hit. And that's part of the Carr thing where, yeah, you're eating it regardless, but now you're eating it without any value returned from Carr playing. It was one thing to be like, yeah, okay, we're taking the hit, but he's still playing. He's still, you're still getting something out of it. It's not that big of a deal. It's a position. You got to fill it anyways. But if you're eating that cap and he's also not playing, but he's also taking up a roster spot, and then you also have Jake Haener and Spencer Rattler. And then if you draft a quarterback, that's a lot of moving pieces. So going and signing an expensive or acquiring an expensive quarterback, whether it's Kirk Cousins or Aaron Rodgers or whoever, that really doesn't kind of fit in the equation, especially if you draft one, because now you've got a 3-headed monster competing. You've got, let's say you sign Kirk Cousins, or let's say you sign Aaron Rodgers, whoever, just flip a coin, pick a quarterback. Let's say you get involved, acquire one of those two guys. Well, they're the starter, but whoever you draft and Spencer Rattler are the ones that are actually competing for the job. The last person you want to be, the last person that's the long-term quarterback are the two that you're paying, right? Derek Carr, you're paying. He's obviously not. And then whoever you go and acquire, if it's Aaron Rodgers or Kirk Cousins or an expensive quarterback like that, they're your second highest paid quarterback, but they're a short-term, they're a non-answer as well, right? And then you have these two competing quarterbacks being your third quarterback and your fourth quarterback are competing, which how hard is it to do that in the NFL with how is your third string quarterback and your fourth string quarterback going to compete during a weekly basis while you're game planning? Like they're getting such minimal amount of snaps, such minimal amount of reps. Like, are they actually competing? You know, like, is there actual anything happening there? So I think because of the Carr thing, like, that changes how you view the quarterback market. IMO.
Right. And it's not just any division rival too, man.
Right.
Like a warm place would have to freeze over before Atlanta and New Orleans did anything, right? You know, to help each other out.
Yeah. So I kind of go, okay, at that point, if they were already going to take a quarterback at 9, if he was available, I don't think this changes it. And if they weren't going to take a quarterback at 9, I'm not sure this changes it either. Because
Thanks,
then
Mike.
They're reaching for a quarterback they didn't think highly enough of prior to that. So I kind of look at it and say, you know, I think those second and third day quarterbacks are in play for a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think it changes it because you don't have the security blanket to let him sit and learn behind Derek Carr, and that increases the volatility. Here's the math. Here's what you have to do if you're in the front office with the Saints. What is your current grade? I'm going to say grade. Pretend it's Madden ratings, all right? And just make it easy. What Madden rating do you have for Spencer Rattler? Now, what grade do you have for Shedeur Sanders? Then, what grade do you have for the rest of the class? All right, let's say you think Spencer Rattler is a 72 overall. Now, let's say you think Shedeur Sanders is a 73 overall. In that situation, you stick with Spencer Rattler, right? It's like, if you have two 73s, you have one 73, right? Like there's not that much different. Go get another guy, go fill another position, whatever. Now, let's say you have Sanders at a 73 overall, but you also have Kyle McCord as a 70 overall. Well, then you're thinking, well, if I can get McCord in the third or the fourth, and he's relatively the same as Sanders and relatively the same as Rattler, then again, take someone else, wait, take McCord later on. So that's the math you got to do, and only the Saints know that. I mean, honestly, like people keep asking me, would you take Sanders or start Rattler? It's like, it depends on the grade. Who knows? They may have McCord higher graded than Sanders. It might not even be a question of Sanders. The question may be Will Howard. The question may be Tyler Shuck. The question may be Rattler or Riley Leonard. I don't know. It depends on the Saints board. But that's the real question. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let me know in the comments below what you think. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.